Then what happened in 2016 in terms of how we got into recession, and then now that we are here and what we expect over the next 5 years. So I won't waste time. In terms of where we are coming from, the first slide I have there speak to a brief history of Nigeria economy. It's very tied to the politics of Nigeria, right from before colonialism up until now. And the best way I look at this most of the time is to go as far back as slave trade and what make Lagos, the nerve center of the Nigerian economy. And that was because after the abolishment of slave trade, Lagos was where many of them landed. And then many of these slave trade that landed, many of them resided in Lagos, and it was a hub for trade. There was the Atlantic coast and all of those. And then colonialism came, and then Africa was partitioned. And then majorly before we were given independence, agric was the main thing for Nigeria. In the Western region, we have cocoa, we have all sorts of other agric products. In the North, we have, granules, kola nut, and all sorts of things. In the South and the East, there was palm oil. And, those were the kind of trade that the British colonial masters were having. But apart from that, we also have a huge mining sector, and I'll speak to that later. But close to independence, Nigeria discovered oil, 1959. And then later on, we got independence. We continue to trade in a lot of agric, in a lot of mining. We started a lot of dependence on oil, but all of that were not a problem until the Civil War. The Civil War came, and the Civil War was nothing much more than about the oil. It was all about oil. If there was no oil in Nigeria between 1966 and 1970, there probably wouldn't be that civil war, and Nigeria would have broken easily. But because of oil, Nigeria as a republic had to stand its ground then so that Biafra would not let it go. But after the Civil War, there was a oil boom. The economy grew. We started exporting oil a lot. About 70 to 80% of our exports then was broadly driven by oil. And then Obasanjo came and he did something called indigenization. What happened with indigenization resulted in the exit of a lot of foreign expatriates that were dealing in a lot of solid mineral, gold, silver, iron ore, name it, anything you want. And that is also linked to why we still have a power sector that is not as developed as it is today, because with indigenization and the kind of war we had with British then, because what Obasanjo did basically was to ask all of them to leave the country, because we wanted to send a message to what was happening in the Southern African region, then. But they left, and then we launched something called the Ajakuta Steel Complex, just to drive a new industrialized Nigeria. But that never saw the light of the day till today. And because we didn't invest, or we didn't allow the growth in that solid mineral sector to continue the way it will have naturally with the help of those foreign expatriates, we were not able to build power supply that will meet up with the kind of demand that our population was calling for as time goes on. So, that was a side story about why, population growth and, our demand for energy wasn't growing side by side as we have it till today. And then we had currency change during the war because, to help defeat the Biafran rebel then, what Awolowo basically did was to just change currency and make nonsense of all their currencies there. So, that's also a very major story in the history of Nigeria. And then there was Buhari's oil glut regime. The president, as we know him today, has always been unlucky as far as the economy is concerned. He came then during the time when there was, a very bad story with oil. When he came again in 2015, it was the same thing, but it was a bad time. We entered the first recession then, and we'll see it. And then there was SAP, Structural Adjustment Program, that the IBB administration launched. We took the first IMF program with all the conditionalities. then. But the common factor with the military rule altogether was the fact that it repressed the economy. The economy was not growing as much as it should be growing. And I will show it in this next slide. Yinka, if you please go to the next slide, you will see that. You will see that during military era, Nigeria barely did up to 6% growth. Yinka, okay, fantastic. We barely did up to 6% growth because the economy was repressed. After IBB administration, there was Abacha, who was, not liked by the international community. And you see that the economy was struggling. The policies were not right. Government controlled almost everything from banking to manufacturing to airports to anything you can think of. So the economy was not growing. It wasn't up until 1999 when we eventually have something that was closest to a semblance of democratic rule that the Obasanjo administration came with fantastic ideas. That administration must be commended. It has been the best that we've had in the recent history of Nigeria. The economy boomed. We did an average of 6 to 10% GDP growth over the period. Because what happened, there was banking sector reform during that period. There was PENCOM reform during that period. There was telecom sector reform during that period. There was power sector reform that we are talking about today that is not yet really, that has not yet really come to fruition, that period. We even tried to, implement the PIB. The PIB was also submitted to the National Assembly during that period just to liberalize the oil and gas sector. Hence the kind of growth that you are seeing during that period. So unlike the hopeless 80s and 90s, the 2000s was the era of not just only Nigeria rising, but Africa rising, a charge that was broadly led by Nigeria, and the fact that wars and all sorts of bad news, bad headlines in Africa, many of them subsided. But between 2008, after the global financial crisis, and what we have today, to be honest with you guys, it has been disastrous. Although there was a boom when it comes to oil prices during that period, there was also a lot of wastage. There was also a lot of insecurity that didn't allow the economy, maximize the potential of that oil boom that we saw during that period. And if I go to the next slide, you'll see how the economy has moved, side by side. I use the NSE All Share Index as a barometer for the economy. You will see that it moved also in the same direction with the price of oil. It got to the peak when oil price also peaked. But look at what we are doing to oil production. Because we refused to pass the PIB for about 20 years, oil production remained within a band of 1 million barrel and 2.5 million barrel. Meaning that because that bill was not passed, there was no fresh investment into that sector that will allow us produce much more than 2 million barrels, per day. And it was appalling. Again, how did we get to the 2016 recession? What simply happened was that because of the wastage in the past, and those of us that were conversant with what happened then, you remember the Sanusi story, how he raised allegation with the government about all the frauds that were happening, the 20 billion dollars that was missing, and so on. How Sanusi was removed, and lo and behold, not too long after that Governor Emefiele was appointed, oil prices crashed again. What followed that was a poor policy response that led to a currency crisis. Foreign investors exited. The naira to dollar exchange rate jumped to as high as 500 naira to a dollar. Our external reserve touched all-time low. And then we also saw oil prices, testing about $25 to a barrel. Hence, we enter recession majorly because our responses were poor, oil prices were down, and then we had some new guys, the Niger Delta Avengers. They came around and they started bombing all our oil assets. So when you have the combined impact of lower oil prices and reduced oil production, that led to a foreign currency crisis in a poorly managed economy. It was a disaster. That was basically what happened during that time. Yinka, if you go to the next slide, you will see what I'm talking to in terms of, how external reserve crashed, oil prices crashed, and exchange rate jumped to all-time high. And you'll see the chart above it showing that, we entered recession as a result of that. It was all of those factors put together. On the next slide, I spoke to how we actually exited that recession and how we remain in a suboptimal growth level. How we exited was simple. We launched something called the EGRP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. And then the Niger Delta guys were appeased. So the vice president struck a deal with them. So they stopped bombing. And then we tried to reform the exchange rate market by introducing the I and E window. That reform also filtered into what the Adeosun Ministry of Finance was doing then with whistleblower policy, VADES, and all those things. And then, we had some structural reforms around PBIC, the agri sector initiatives, and all of that. And then we're able to come out of that recession in 2017. In the next slide, I speak to what is happening now, where we are now. The next two slides, Yinka, where we are now is a situation whereby all of the things that can go bad has gone bad. The coronavirus, even though it has been predicted by many health care and infectious disease experts in the past, struck when we least expect it. And I will not speak to all the different conspiracy theories around this thing, but what we know is that markets have tumbled and governments and central banks across the world are responding with a robust fiscal and monetary plan like we've never seen before. But if you look back at the history of pandemic, you will know that we've been here before. And a study done by Wharton Business School shows that between 2011 and 2017, there were about 1,300 epidemic events that occurred during those periods. So these things are actually much more common than we thought. But the reason why this was so bad was partly because of hubris. Some people were living in denial. Maybe the World Bank also, the World Health Organization also did, warn countries to shut down their borders, their economies early, so that we don't receive all those people that flew in with the virus. But somehow we are here now. And these are the hardest hit sectors. Inka, if you go to the next slide, you'll see where I'm speaking to about the history of pandemics as to how we've had so many pandemics in the past, including the popular one, which was the Spanish flu. The Ebola virus was more recent in Nigeria. There was SARS, there was HIV/AIDS and all sorts in the past. Inka, I think you should move the slide, but I'm in the slide after, the 2 slides away from what I'm seeing on the screen now. Okay, I was speaking to how everything that can go bad has gone bad. Today, we hear that there's a deal reached by OPEC member alongside Russia and a few other, stakeholders. But the problem is that even if OPEC reach an agreement, the probability of oil prices coming back is slim, basically because demand is going to be weak, even after many economies are unlocked. The reason is because US, Europe, and China alone account for more than 50% of oil demand across the world. And they are the most badly, affected by this coronavirus. So apart from the fact that we have a oil glut, there's a demand problem that we have to contend with. And to contend with that, you need the aviation sector to come back to life. You need the automobile industry to come back to life. You need tourism and a lot of huge demand sectors to come back to life. And that's probably not going to happen for another 3 to 4 months. The next slide I look at is what's happening in Africa. Africa is probably going to be badly hit by this. IMF is predicting that Africa will probably, West Africa will hit recession for the first time in about 25 years. And that's because just like the coronavirus, the health crisis, that is affecting the most vulnerable the most. Most vulnerable economies are likely to be the most badly hit by this the economic impact of this coronavirus by the time we are done. But how long are we going to last in a lockdown? The lessons from China, South Korea, and Hong Kong might just be the best base case that we can look at. They locked down the economy for about 2 to 3 months, and then they were able to start again. US, Spain, Italy, it looks like they are peaking there already. So they may just be able to unlock the economy anytime from May. President Trump wants to unlock the economy early enough, just after Easter, but I doubt if that is going to be possible. BCG did a study recently. They took a sample of the 20 largest economy and look at the earliest time they can unlock their economy after this lockdown. What we are seeing, Yinka, you need to go to about 2 to 3 slides away from what is on the screen now. What they are seeing is about, on the average, most of these economies will open up back anything from June, July. So that's what we're expecting. On my next slide, Yinka, I need you to move this slide. The next one after this. The next one. One more. The one that speaks to the scenario. Yes, this one. So this speaks to the scenario of where we are going. The areas that are painted gray, these are the most likely thing. People have been talking about which one is the most likelihood for recovery. Is it going to be a V shape or a U shape? To be honest, depends on the response in terms of healthcare and the economic stimulus. What we've seen is a situation whereby countries lock down completely. If that lasts for about 2 months, and then with the size of the robust fiscal policy that we are seeing, US is launching about $2 trillion stimulus package. Eurozone is launching over 750 billion euro. The UK is launching close to 350. Nigeria is doing a lot also. Now, if you combine the two effects of this total lockdown and these huge fiscal packages, we are most likely going to have a V-shaped recovery. Or if things didn't go as planned, maybe you have it as A1 rather than A4, which will be a situation where the rapid and effective control is not well managed. And then apart from the first wave of this virus, we experience the second wave, or even this third wave, whereby after they allow us to go back to work, they ask people to go back and stay home again just to contain it. But we are being very, very optimistic here that somehow, because this has happened before. I was reading an article earlier in the week. All of the things happening now happened 100 years ago during the Spanish flu, and it locked down everywhere. It took about a year before things got to normal. Actually, that flu disappeared by itself. They didn't know where it came from, and it appeared by itself. So, but because knowledge have advanced, technology have advanced today, we're better off. Although, in terms of preparedness, what has happened so far show that we are not prepared. But somehow we might just be able to ride out of the curve and see a V-shaped recovery. In terms of the local economy, Yinka, if you go to the next slide, all the policies launched by the central bank in conjunction with the private sector, they are going to help. Before now, people have doubts as to whether Nigeria can actually handle pandemic because of the size of our hospital capacity. Our bed space compared to patient is actually very low. But with the kind of impetus we are seeing, we might just be able to probably manage this better than many of us thought. And then, if you look at what government is also doing, they have cut all the budget estimates. They are borrowing hugely. Even NEPA is doing giveaway. They are likely to give us 2 months off for April and May. I don't know about those that already have prepaid meter though, but for those that are on estimated billing, it looks like all of you are going to be getting a giveaway, even from NEPA. They might look a little, but these things will go, a long way in supporting the economy, unlike if there was nothing at all. We've seen exchange rate devaluation because while the central bank was doing, gra before, Inka, if you want to go to about 2 to 3 slides from here, after the oil price tanked, we had to adjust the currency. And we think that will probably stay under pressure going forward, especially at the parallel market, until we see some sort of normalcy that will allow the central bank, bring about convergence again. Equities, Yinka, I'm on the financial market slide now, has stumbled. I think is on the lowest level it can be. I think people should be buying really, I know you need to stay in cash. You should probably take your, portfolio and divide it into three. Put one in cash, put some of it in equities, then some in probably some money market or bond fund. But equity is at the cheapest level it can, ever be. The current level is almost lower than the global financial crisis. It's currently lower than where it was in 2016. So I think there's a huge value. And if you look at the best listed stocks on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the dividend yield that they are offering compared to the price is completely ridiculous. I think that's what led to the kind of upsurge that we saw today when people realized that OPEC is probably going to reach a deal. Again, Eurobond, the yield there is massive right now. Look at where those things were compared to before the crisis. But in the money market and the bond space, we are not seeing a lot, but bond yields have actually increased slightly, unlike the NTB yields that has not really moved a lot. Yes, the next slide speaks to the impact analysis of the current, coronavirus and where we see. What I think is that government revenue is already halved. The next thing you will see is a situation where states will become vulnerable again because their allocation will be low. Pressure on reserve will continue. There will probably be a credit quality issue whereby NPLs will grow. Fitch Rating and all these rating agencies, they've already downgraded our credit rating. So you probably will see some loan restructuring going forward. And GDP is probably going to contract, especially in Q2 2020. But there might be a quick rebound in Q4. Maybe Q3 will be flat, just like Q1. Q1 is probably going to be flat, or the contraction will be a bit mild. But we are hoping for a V-shaped recovery. In terms of outlook, we are seeing inflation climb to about 13% going forward. NPR is probably not going to be changed. GDP will contract. Oil price will probably stay around $30, even if OPEC is able to reach a deal. Maybe 35 because of the size of, the reduction in supply that they are looking at. FX is a problem, but I think the bearish sentiment in the equities market will reduce before the end of the year. So compared to minus 20%, you might just be seeing minus 15 to minus 10% by year end, or something better if things magically just improve. I would like to round up now in terms of where we see ourselves in the next 5 years for the economy. Yinka, if you go to the second to the last slide, I think, there will be a slight decline in, economic activity this year. There's likely going to be a quick rebound in 2020. And then for the next 5 years, entering to 2025, because that's the focus I was given, I think we'll see a gradual recovery because the Buhari administration has its own style. And because they will not allow certain things to, go the way many pro-market analysts will have wanted, I think growth will be broadly subdued, but it will continue at the trajectory we were just before this crisis. But of course, this forecast is barring, a situation where another unlikely event that nobody saw coming, like the COVID-19, jump out of nowhere. In terms of the sector you should be looking at, I think the tech space is huge now. Healthcare is going to be a big deal over the next 6 to 1 year because we are coming out of COVID. I mean, it's just going to be like during the HIV and the Ebola crisis, things like, protective gears and all those healthcare equipment will be a big deal because we need to protect those guys at the front line. Otherwise, we won't be able to treat those that are infected. And then hand sanitizers, all this kind of, hygiene product, they will be a big deal because even if they unlock the economy, COVID-19 is not going to disappear. It will still be locking somewhere. So we'll still need to keep social distance. We'll probably still need to maintain a high sense of hygiene and all that. So those items, they will be a big deal. Food processing, agri, logistics, those are sectors that you probably want to be looking at going forward. I think I should round up now. The last thing I was asked here to do is to advise participants as to what they will do. I mean, I don't know. I think most of us are young. We should invest in equities. If you have a medium to long-term horizon, the prices can never get cheaper. If you think it will go lower, well, maybe it will, but even if it goes lower, the rebound will be very sharp from what we have seen in the last 3 weeks. Job seekers, I think you should invest in yourself. Take all those professional exams, don't give up. Keep applying, go after exactly what you want. For professionals, I mean, I think we should also continue to invest in ourselves. We should, apart from our salaries, invest in financial market instruments, do Eurobond, do equities. You might get your fingers burnt every now and then, but you will learn one or two things. But then speak to those that really know about these things to guide you to. I think for business owners, I've already mentioned the sectors I think they should be looking at in terms of how to manage the process. The economy will rebound. The world has been here before. This will not last forever. Somehow we'll beat COVID-19 and then we'll be back on our feet again. I want to thank us all for our audience. I think this is the point where I would like us to open the floor for a conversation, for comments, for questions, for additions, probably subtraction and multiplications too. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wale. That was a quite insightful presentation. So the floor is open for questions as Wale would attempt to answer most of the questions that have been asked. So you can use the chat box. If you have a question, you can use the chat box. I can see one question in the chat box already. Wale, you could also see it from your end, I believe, the chat box.
Yes, I can see. I'm reading through the chat now. Okay, one of the questions is, given the effects of the pandemic on Africa, how does this affect the AFTA agreement? Fantastic question. Fantastic question. The next one says, what is the impact of COVID-19 now and post-COVID-19 on the construction industry in Nigeria market space? What should engineers be looking forward to? Well, I mean, for the first question, I think after, just like many of the plans that a lot of people had for 2020, is going to hit a setback because of this COVID-19. I mean, it's a no-brainer. If everybody is locking down their economy, they are closing down borders, they are not allowing new people to enter because of the spread or to curb the spread, and shutting down airplane. I think it will be difficult for us to actually carry on with the AFTA agreement the way we initially planned. So even if it will kickstart in July, maybe with some modification in a way that we also want to protect ourselves so that we don't have a second or a third wave of this virus. For the construction industry, I think things will slow a little because for now, everybody wants to think about survival first before you start constructing anything. Most of the investment will be channeled towards welfare. And if you are going to have any construction going forward, the biggest reality of COVID-19 is the fact that public health is a big deal if you want the economy to survive. So maybe construction that have to do with the public healthcare sector, yes. Education, yes. Maybe key infrastructure too might just continue a bit, but you might not see it. I mean, many of these governments are cutting their budgets just so that they can keep people on their jobs and then do social welfare. So, I mean, I doubt if there's going to be as much. What should engineers be looking at? I think they should start looking at how this can support the healthcare sector um, um, instead. Yeah, but I mean, give or take, some activity will still happen in the construction space. We still need road. Paved road in Nigeria is about 70, on paved road is about 70%. So yeah. Okay, let me look at other questions. Looking at the future forecast, would you consider investing in mutual fund a smart move? I think it is. I think it is still a smart move because it frees you up of all the worries. And depending on where you stay in terms of your risk appetite, if you're risk averse, you don't like risk at all, your money markets, your bond fund, some of them are not even marked to market. They will do. If you have dollar, you probably want to put some of them in your in Eurobond fund as well. But if you like risk, you can as well take the equity mutual fund. Some of them would do, they will do well in the next few months because, you know, for the fund managers that are discerning, if they can rebalance their portfolio to take advantage of what is happening now, you might just be able, you know, to take some of those advantage. Thank you, Wale, for your presentation. Do you think the yield environment for treasuries will remain the same? Do you expect any significant monetary policy change? Well, like I said, most monetary policy agencies are becoming very, very accommodative at the moment. But in Nigeria, what we've done from last year, late last year, is probably going to affect things a lot. So we are seeing NTB rates at a very low single digit. I think they will climb up, but only marginally, only marginally. Maybe bond yield will increase a bit, you know, to an average of about 11 to 12%, but treasury bills, until CBN, you know, stop this whole dichotomy thing where they don't allow certain segments of the market to, you know, take advantage of OMO, we might not see what we are looking at. Also, travel industry. I'm looking at the next question now. How can one position himself in the current surge in losses in employment and potential standard that will be set post-COVID? Also, as we see rise in ICT industry, what skill set should I pursue? I mean, I think we can speak to IT guys here in terms of the, you know, specifics. But I think there's a thing about coding now. You probably want to learn how to be a developer. You probably want to, you know, learn software engineering, all sorts of things. But space is a big deal. Even digital marketing, you know, there's a whole lot happening there. So I think the digital economy, you know, is the the digital revolution is the next big thing, clearly from what we are seeing, even during this economic lockdown that we are seeing. The next question says, how can traders, especially FX traders, take advantage of COVID-19 now and also after COVID-19? I mean, FX traders, well, many of them that are positioned before the devaluation, they should already be in money. If you are not, it's going to be a bit difficult for you to get any FX now because liquidity is even very difficult to get now. But if you can get, you know, you probably just want to arbitrage because what is happening in the parallel market is at a huge spread compared to the official market. Inka, I don't know if there are contributions, but there are a lot of questions here. Inka. Hello, Inka. Hello. Hello.
I'm with you, Wale. I was on mute.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're with you. So basically, we still have a couple of questions. Let me try and check to ensure we have. So someone here is saying you predicted a V-shaped recovery in the Nigerian economy. what policy changes from the federal government are you basing your assumption on? Like the expectation of a V-shaped recovery.
Okay, so I mean, the biggest problem for Nigeria, really, to be honest, in my opinion, is not whatever we are doing locally. The biggest issue is what is happening in the rest of the world. If the rest of the world refuse to come out of this whole COVID-19 pandemic or pandemonium, as one of my friends called it, it might just be a bit difficult for us, basically because of oil prices. But if you look at Nigeria, the recorded cases, they are considerably low compared to what we are seeing in the Western economy. But of course, people will argue that that's because we are not testing enough people. Yes, I agree with that. But whatever happened over the next 2 weeks will tell us. For example, in the last 1 week or 8 days in April, we've recorded more than 130 new cases. So definitely that thing is growing exponentially. But I think we will peak very soon, to be honest. And then how many people are dying? So we might just be able to actually contain this, and then we'll be able to open up the economy again for activities to continue as normal. But if the rest of the world does not get out of this on time, it might not help. But if they get out of this because of the strong fiscal policy initiatives that we are seeing and the total lockdown, then the V-shape can be such that Q2 is a slightly deep contraction. Q3, moderates a bit because things will have improved. And then by Q4 or early 2021, economic activities can jump back to about 2%. So, I mean, that's under a scenario where the healthcare aspect of the healthcare response of this whole pandemic is well managed, and then the fiscal side of things is also robust enough. And to be fair with you, if you look at what private sector is doing, what government is doing, what myself and yourself we are doing, many of us can, agree with me that even for your neighbors, your friend, your family, your relative, everybody's doing giveaway. So, I mean, these are palliative anyhow you want to look at it. Everybody is, losing something to the pandemic one way or the other. But this will support, it will ease the pain, it will support consumption. And then, if we can all stay indoor and control this thing over the next 2 months, maybe we can just get back to work and, with the size of reduction or oil output cuts that Saudi and these guys are looking at, oil price might rebound a bit, or we'll have a little bit of output problem, but things might just, improve slightly better. We might not get a growth that will rebound back to the level we were, but we'll start coming out gradually. A situation where it is longer will be a situation where you record about 2 to 3 declines, quarters of decline, before you rebound. I don't think that is likely to, it may happen, but I think the probability is not as high, basically, yeah. Inka.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Wale. I hope we still have we could still take 3 questions.
Depends on how much time we have left for this whole conversation.
We still have a couple of time on our hands. So there is one question on Africa. The pandemic has revealed the weakness inherent in supply chain and manufacturing, and possibility of manufacturing moving supply chain closer to home. How do you expect this structural change to affect global trade and how it affects Africa? Basically, supply chain and people looking inward with, most ports are being closed at the moment. So how do you see these affecting Africa and generally global trade?
Well, I think the dynamics in terms of global supply chain will change, because one thing that everybody is realizing is what President Trump has been saying. It looks like there's too much dependence on China. And earlier in the week, I read something about Japan trying to move out some of its um, key companies out of China back to Japan. I think the world has to reduce its dependence in terms of exposure to China, and that might happen post COVID-19 because that was what initially rendered um, demand very weak. I think it's too much exposure that um, the world is likely going to review again after COVID-19. In terms of Africa, the problem is many African countries are commodity dependent, either oil or Greek or cocoa or horticulture or solid mineral. Now, if many of the factories in China, some of them are back on, but if they are not producing at full capacity, if demand in Europe is still going to be weak because of what is happening in Spain, in Italy, in Germany, in the UK, and of course, with what is happening in US, those markets are the largest consumers. If those economies don't come back on their feet on time, it will definitely affect demand for many of these commodities from many African countries. So it is clear that we are very vulnerable. It might hit us much more harder than we thought. But some of the countries like Nigeria are already very fragile. So I mean, the question is, how low can we go again? I mean, it's not like we are fully out of the previous recession. So I mean, those are the areas I was looking at, and I was like, I mean, worst case, they will unlock the economy again, and things will rebound, not straight back to where it used to be, but we'll start coming out gradually, like we did the last time. Yeah, Inka.
Yes, so we have like a couple of other questions, but we'll restrict it to like two more. So basically, there's a question around fiscal policy responses so far in Nigeria. How effective do you think this is? Do you think the government should consider giving tax break rather than the extension that they've done? Well, so, and what else? Okay. And what do you think about us raising external form of borrowing? Because it's looking like the Eurobond market at the moment is not the way to go. So what do you suggest in form of external borrowing? So basically, that's the question.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of the external borrowing, I think the first question was about the tax.
Yeah, fiscal policy.
Fiscal policy, yes. Well, I mean, we're already doing some of this one way or the other. Now, the problem is if some of these companies don't even make profits, they can't pay taxes. So we want to be sure that they are in that position. Taxes are a function of how profitable many of these, or how viable many of these businesses are. So just like somebody said, we might want to look at some of the items in the finance bill again to see the ones that we can push back and or delay further just to ease the pain at the moment. I think I will support that. You might also want to look at increasing the basket for sectors that are more vulnerable. SMEs and small businesses were exempted from certain type of taxes in the finance bill. So we might also want to consider other sectors that were not premeditated before that we want to, look into that. So we might want to, look at that. Again, we might legislate laws that stop companies from actually laying off people. You can put them on no work, no pay. You can, find a way. Government might bail out some companies. I don't know. It's really tough. But those international loans, I mean, there's nothing we can do. They are concessional loans. They are very cheap. And Nigeria does not do IMF program, which comes with conditionalities. So the IMF program we are taking now is not the regular IMF program. So I won't say I'm completely against it, especially given the fact that it's concessionary and it's cheaper than your regular Eurobond. So I will do it put us in a better fiscal position compared to if we've gone for the Eurobond. Imagine how many percent will have been, taking those credits at the moment. So, I mean, we need the loan. We need to invest in a lot of infrastructure, especially healthcare now, given this reality. The money is not going to jump out from nowhere. If Buhari is not going to, sell some assets, or I know NNPC is talking about actually deregulating the downstream oil and gas sector, but I mean, how much are we even going to save there now that oil prices are very low? So, I mean, the only thing you can do is to take concessionary loan, but make sure you use them well. It's not, again, it is not the loan. It is how you put them to use that's really, really matter. And that's the area we've always failed over the year. We take loans, the returns on those loans, the benefits, they don't outweigh the costs because of all other costs such as corruption and mismanagement of funds. So I think those are the big issues that we probably want to look into. But we need this loan, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Wale. So there's this question on how can companies secure their staffs without relieving them of their duties during this pandemic? Since this time, companies' revenue is going to be dwindling. So how do you think they can manage this?
I mean, there are a number of options apart from laying off. They put people on unpaid leave. There's no work, no pay. A friend of mine, they give them option in their office, no work, no pay. So throughout the COVID-19 period, they'll be at home. They keep their job, but they are probably not going to earn salary. Some people will put workers on half salary instead of zero. It's all sort of giveaway, to be honest, and it's going to be tough on all of us. But if we are not going to lay off people, those are the areas. You can also cut some regular benefits. Some people are worried. I read something about KPMG US cutting out their performance-based bonus. Those are areas, but I mean, they are happy because they are still going to keep their jobs. It's just that benefit that they will lose. So I think companies can look at the areas where they can cut costs that will not affect the salary. It might affect some of the perks, to those offices, to those roles, but you can still keep people on the job, basically. Yeah, Inka.
There's a question on how do you think this monetary policy and fiscal policy response that we're seeing, are you sure this would help us avert a recession? Like all these responses, can they help us not enter recession?
So, I mean, the question is, if you do nothing and if you do something, if we do nothing, the recession will be deeper because people will not even have any money to be able to afford food. In fact, the cure will even be more deadly than the disease itself, because by the time you lock people down and you don't have any of these kind of giveaways that government is doing, and people can't even afford food, a lot of people will die of hunger. There will be chaos in the streets. People will start stealing somehow. So even though we will still enter, the economy is probably going to enter a recession in Q2 because for most of Q2, things are going to be at very, very low ebb. But it will have been worse without that stimulus package. That's what I think many people are saying, rather than, whether the stimulus is necessary or if it is doing anything at all. I think without it, will have been worse off. It will just palliate it. That's it. That's the word, palliate. Palliative means there's pain anyway, but I know you are standing, but at least hold this pole so that when the vehicle is moving, you don't fall off. But it's still painful to stand anyway.
Okay. The final question for today, as we try to bring this section to a close, what will be the effect of this pandemic on Nigerian and African agricultural sector now that farmers and investors are currently running at a loss in the sector, correlating it with the economic growth that is being projected? So this is a question from Michael Adediran.
Okay, thank you, Michael. again, like I said, I think the biggest problem is the international markets. You know, for a Ghana, a Cote d'Ivoire, I have a huge cocoa industry. You know, if many of those beverage companies, all those companies making all those chocolates and so on, Nutella and co, will be on lockdown or they'll be short for a while, those demand will be weak. If those demand are weak, imagine what will happen to the, you know, cocoa exports in Nigeria, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana. Now, Ghana has a huge oil and gas industry again, you know, now constituting about 30% of their exports. With a lower price, imagine what will happen to them. Imagine what will happen to Nigeria that has about 90% of its exports in oil. You know, and you look across Africa like that. So that's why we are seeing a huge impact on many of these African countries that are very, very vulnerable. We are not as rich. We probably need international bailout because we are the most vulnerable, just like all those elderly people and people with underlying sickness that are dying to corona. You know, many African countries are already heavily indebted also. So imagine what this coronavirus and the fact that their export sales are going to be limited is going to do to them. So I think those are the impacts that will hurt many of these countries a lot until we have all those factories reopen in Europe, in US. You know, China is almost back online before we will now see a recovery.
Okay, thank you very much, Wale. This will be bringing this session to a close. We thank you for your time. For accepting our invitation at short notice. We really appreciate you so much. It has been an insightful session so far. Thank you very much. So to all,
thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. So to all our participants, we also thank you for joining this call. Today we maxed out 100 participants from the beginning to the end. We have a maximum number of people that can join this call, and the maximum is 100, and we maxed it throughout this call. Even while we were waiting for Wale to join the call, we still had 100 people on the call till now. So we really appreciate you all for staying till this time to listen to this call. Also note that we'll be making provision for the audio for your own personal digest. And
Inka,
for those
please,
that couldn't...
Inka,
okay.
Please, I also like to thank everyone. You know, I just ran through the participants now and I saw a long list. I saw some names that I know: Razak Salau, Fumbi, I think there's Nike Salau there too. A lot of names that, you know, I saw there. I want to thank you all for your patience. Thank you for waiting while we're trying to connect. Again, I'm really sorry. Really appreciate the audience. Thank you. God bless you. And guys, please, let's continue to stay safe. Yeah.
Yes, please. Let's continue to stay safe throughout this period. So there'll be the audio session available, make it available to everyone later via email. And also stay tuned with Finance Professional Network. We do more of this. There's more session that has been scheduled for everyone. It is a weekly thing. Last week we had Wale Okurimboye on this platform. Today it is Wale Olusi. And next week there will be someone else again coming to speak to us on a different topic. So stay tuned with FPN. We really appreciate you all. And we also welcome feedbacks as much as possible. Try to give us your feedbacks. I can see people are asking for the slides. Yeah, we will make that available also. And people are already budging us saying we should increase the number of participants. Yeah, we will look into that. But for now, we have a maximum of 100 just to keep this session very engaging. So thank you, everyone. I don't know if Abraham have anything to tell our facilitator and the participants before we end this meeting. Abraham, are you still there? Okay. I think Abraham have left, but I saw him just now. That's
No, he
why I
hasn't
had to
left.
call him.
I think he's trying to unmute himself.
He's on mute now. Over to you, Abraham. Hello, Abraham. So I'm not sure is anyway. That was an impromptu call. He wasn't expecting it. Probably he's far away from his phone at the moment. But yeah, thank you everyone. There's more of this that is on table for us next week. Just watch out. We'll release a flyer as to this. And thank you once again, Wale. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you as we bring this meeting to a close.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
And
thank you.